on to our next session. It's a special discussion on India 2047, how to become a tech superpower. We have heard in the morning about how India is poised to take this tech leap and has the potential to be a major tech leader by 2047. There have been many initiatives focused on deep tech, digital governance, sustainable tech, and many more. So, to share insights on this topic, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Raman Roy, CMD Quatrro BPO Solutions, Dr. BVR Mohan Reddy, founder Cyient, Mr. Srikanth Velamakanni, co-founder, Group Chief Executive and Vice Chairman, Fractal Analytics, and the session will be moderated by Pradeep Gupta, Chairman, CyberMedia Group.
Okay, so interesting topic we have. The best thing is we can, except for him, probably we can say whatever we want because the chance of us being around to see what we are saying today in 2047, I don't know what the odds are for that. Okay. But I'm sure this young man, of course, would definitely be there to remember our words. All right. Okay. So, if you look at 2047 and if you talk about the tech superpower, the first thing which is required for any ambitious project like this is to have a vision. And very clearly, we today have that vision. Amritkal, Digital India, DPI, the entire layer, etc., which is there. Very clearly, there is a vision that we want to become a tech superpower, right? And therefore, I am not going to spend that much time in discussing that because I think we have the vision. The next thing which is required is that you need to have specific things in place. And once again, I can see a lot of stuff being put together for that. And today, in the morning sessions, there's been a lot of discussion on that. For instance, the AI mission was talked about, the quantum mission was talked about, the data being put, the geospatial data being talked about, space being talked about, and so on. So, a lot of these things are now there in place and also supported with serious money behind those. So once again, I will not really talk about that, okay? But for that to happen, we need resources, okay? And most important resource being manpower. And therefore, I would request BVR, if you can talk about, if you can kick off this entire discussion on how ready we are in terms of the deep tech manpower that will be required, what needs to be done in order to be able to achieve that, what are some of the things that we need to take. And Mr. Kalsi is gone, but otherwise, it would have been interesting to have some input from him as well on this particular topic. But over to you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Good evening to all of you. Very relevant question you raised, Pradeep. 2047, a key resource that we have is all our people. And what do we require to do with our people? So today, if you look at 2047, I think you didn't use this word called Viksit Bharat. That's yet another terminology that's being used. By 2047, well, India will become a $30 trillion economy. All that seem to be true. I think I believe in it. But I think there are a number of initiatives that have to be taken to make sure that that dream of ours, or ambitious goal that we have at this point in time, becomes a reality. Today, if you look at India a little more closely, I think the biggest advantage we have is the demographic dividend. 62.5% of the Indian population today is in the working age group of 16 to 62 years, is itself a great reflection of what potential this nation has. But along with that particular advantage we also have a baggage coming along with it. Our ability to make sure these people are well educated, thereafter they get the right skills, and make sure that there's enough employment that is created to ensure that this nation becomes a lot more economical, definitely becomes economic superpower. So therefore, I think what we need to do is to focus first on education. Today, certainly the situation in the quality of education is not certainly something we can be very pleased about. There's several times that this issue has been debated. People like me have spent a similar amount of our life in the last 5 years in terms of trying to see where we are going wrong and what we need to take as corrective action. The good news you have is that the government also has come forward with this new education policy 2020, which has many elements of making sure that we change the system. The students have to certainly move away from the rote learning into critical thinking, system thinking. These are the areas that they focus on. And we need to make sure that they get the skills in problem solving. They need to use their hands. It has to be student-centric learning that has to come by. The bigger challenge we also have thereafter is the teachers themselves. Teachers have become absolutely outdated. They're not willing to change at this point of time. Amount of effort that goes in from the nation at this juncture is just unimaginable. So we have to plug those areas of making sure the teacher changes. If the teacher can change, there are other outside interventions that have to happen. The connectivity, the deep connect between the industry and academia has to increase. That is not lacking. And then the amount of work that is being done on research itself is something which is to be improved dramatically. Today, to give you a flavor, only 0.6% of the national GDP is spent on R&D. 4.5% of nation's GDP is spent on education. Those numbers have to definitely go up. One might challenge me saying that, is it just the government money that has to be spent? No, not necessarily true. It can be a public-private partnership through which we will be in a position to move further. I was talking to Dr. Kalsi, you talked about him a little while earlier. Both of us are working on a project right now on UGC for online digital education. This is for distance education as well as online education. And we're saying that how do we, if we truly want to increase the number of college-going students from 4 crores to 8 crores, the biggest intervention that has to happen is through distance education. And that is, and today, I think for sure, one other thing that comes as an advantage to us is technology. The ability to leverage technology in education is something which will definitely make sure that we will get to that goal of being a tech leader by 2047.
Wonderful. Coming to you, Srikanth, Gen AI is where you are, and that is going to be defining a lot of things which are going to be, will define the picture for 47. That's an important ingredient. So are so many other technologies, but I think this is one of the very defining technologies. Do you think we are spending enough, or do we need to spend more on? I mean, how does it compare with the kind of money that EU is spending, US is spending, or China is spending, and so on, in terms of Gen AI? And I do remember a statement which came around the time when we were having our last awards night on, India should forget about AI, and India should essentially be just following the tech developments which are happening elsewhere in the world. Okay, which was hotly contested last year by CP Gurnani. So, your view on that.
Thank you. So firstly, India is adding 1 million people to the workforce every month for the next 8 years. So it's going to add 100 million new workers. And India is the only major country in the world that's adding to its workforce. Every other country is actually declining. So that's a fact. And given how AI is changing everything, including the need for workforce, I think it's both an opportunity and a huge risk and challenge that India needs to work with. So I don't think you can ignore AI in the way we are thinking about India's future. When I think very, very long term, I've done a lot of thinking on this topic, and I feel like the 2 vectors that India needs to work on to create the 2047 future are education and entrepreneurship. If we get these 2 right, I think everything gets taken care of because of these 2. I think Mohan Garu already spoke eloquently about education, and certainly I can add a little bit to that. But entrepreneurship, let me just talk about entrepreneurship. I think we have we have a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem that I feel is very different from the entrepreneurship of the first generation of entrepreneurship. Some of the members of the tech industry have talked about that. The second generation of entrepreneurship, probably, which I represent. Now that there's a third generation of entrepreneurs that I feel are incredibly bold, incredibly ambitious. They are certainly thinking of India in a very different way, and they have not seen the India of the 80s and the 70s and 90s, so they don't have any of the baggage. So the way they are thinking about what is next is amazing, and they're not thinking that India has to be in some way subservient to the rest of the world, that we need to serve the rest of the world. They are thinking of how do we lead the world. And I think this is going to be the game-changing ingredient for India's success. And how do we nurture that entrepreneurship? How do we make sure that there's a vibrant investment ecosystem? How do we make sure that, especially in AI, how does a government has a lot of use cases. It can easily give $1 billion of use cases for the AI industry or the deep tech industry. So how can it create these small companies that are, let's say, less than 5 years old, who can come and address these challenges, in the process build it out? I'm the chair of a board of Idea Forge, which is India's largest drone manufacturer. It's also a public company. And their entire market is Indian government. Unfortunately or fortunately, that's the situation. So if India can actually create those use cases for these deep tech companies to come and solve India's most important problems and build the industry, that would be one. The second would be, can India really also, maybe India could co-invest in these deep tech startups, maybe along with some of the biggest VCs in the country. Can we say, okay, I'm going to invest $1 billion, and $1 billion is really small money for India at this point of time. $1 billion every year in tech startups, along with, let's say, other VC firms, and then I'll create $1 billion of use cases for all the tech companies. That would sort of trigger this movement. And the third vector is train 5 to 10 million people, and maybe even more, on AI. How to use AI, how to build AI, how to be a citizen of AI. If you do all these three things, I think we will have the right infrastructure for entrepreneurship, and then, of course, education. Mohan, you already spoke about.
And he said 2 ingredients. One is education and entrepreneurship, and you are
and I will
very
add
much
to that.
in the area of entrepreneurship now, startup ecosystem. But just one additional point I would like to you to talk about. So far we have done some great technology work, but most of that IP has not belonged to India. We talked about the R&D hubs of various large companies which are there in India. For instance, why not some of the valuation of NVIDIA should actually belong to India, because of the number of Indians which are actually working on the stuff which is being done by and for several companies, it's the same kind of a situation. So entrepreneurship, but also if you can talk about intellectual property and what we need to do in terms of trying to protect that.
Okay, I'll try. And earlier PG told me, be yourself, be controversial. So I will start with that, and then I'll try and cover the piece. So he spoke about education and entrepreneurship. Both are there, both are required, and I'll add a little more to both these. But there is a very essential ingredient that is required that I think we don't fully understand and have not absorbed, which is policy. And let me take a couple of examples. I'm not talking of 23 years later at 47, where shame on us if we are not a superpower by then. Because we have the resources, we have the capability, we have the startup ecosystem, we have the ability to educate, and we have the people. Google, we all know Google? Some of us do? It was formed in a college. The professor, from what I read, put in $50,000 for those kids to create what is Google today. It is a different matter that 50,000 became some $6 billion worth. But today, if a kid in IIT or IISc works with a professor, do you know our policies do not allow the professor to invest in his company? Okay, so he's not allowed to invest. Okay, good luck. The kids form a company and they decide to give him ESOPs. Do you know if they are a DPIIT registered startup, they cannot give ESOPs to their professor? Not only that, I'll give you a case of an actual startup. I will not take names, I'll get into trouble. Where a professor who taught those kids, who created a company after he retired, became an advisor, got ESOPs, he got sued by the government to say that your knowledge while you were a salaried employee is being used by this startup and you're not entitled to do that. We want to become a superpower. We have to create an environment for those startups to grow and prosper. We should not be jealous of people who make shitload of money as long as they create innovation, they create jobs, they create things, they create the next Google, the next Facebook, the next whatever out of India. Because those guys are very, very rich. I mean, you all saw the picture of the Facebook founder looking at the watch of Mukesh Ambani's son and saying, wow, what a watch, right? He could have bought a few dozen of those for each one of the guests. But the point I'm making is he is rich. He came out of the university and in a few years he made that kind of money. We should allow that to happen. I mean, I can tell you stories and stories. I come from the startup world. I can tell you stories and stories that will make you all burst into tears of how badly we treat our startups. Startups are a future. That is where I think PG wanted me to bring out some aspects. The innovativeness of an Indian. You know, a few years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I tried to describe to, I come from an industry where all my customers were overseas. I didn't do any rupee billing. They were all overseas customers. And over a drink at a hotel very near here, I sat with a customer and he said, what is it that drives India? What is it that drives Indian industry? And I was telling him that we are innovative by nature. And the example I gave him at that time, let me try and give it to you. I will not use too much time on that. At that time, the movies used to be 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and everything. Unlike today where you have flexibility. The water used to come only for 2 hours. And you had to fill the buckets so that you could run it. And if the water came after 3 o'clock, you could not go for a 3 o'clock movie unless you had alternate arrangements to fill water. The Indian mind found solutions on a day-to-day basis. Some people call it jugaad. I mean, call it whatever. How does a name matter? But we have an intrinsic ability to find solutions. If we educate them, like what Mohan Garu said, if we create a fertile ground and give them that higher capability, the quality of the solutions they can come back with will be world-beating. That is how we'll take our place in 2047.
Thank you very much, Raman, for that. Okay, let me take one more issue with the three of you. And that is on the geopolitical scene. Because I think the biggest challenge that will come as far as the journey to becoming a tech superpower internal issues कुछ ना कुछ जुगाड़ हम लोग कर लेंगे, right? But what has happened in China, for example, that they were becoming a tech superpower, and therefore now, whether it is Europe or US, and the chip wars that have been there, etc., etc. So the fact is that for 30 years, chips were not allowed to be manufactured in this country because of something or the other, committees after committees and so on. But I'm sure there were forces behind all the delay tactics that happened from 80s onward on SCL. My point is that there will be this pressure that will come from international forces. And what is it that we should be done in terms of trying to sort of protect us against those forces that will be there? Yep. Mohan.
I think what we have seen is the supply chains are being redefined all around the world, irrespective of the religion we follow or the communities that we belong to, or the political affiliations that we have. I think people have now realized that world is not going to be a stable place. It will be very VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, and so on and so forth, ambiguous. And so the result is that we will see that ambiguity continuing forever. It's not going to be temporary at this point of time. So people have to definitely redefine their supply chains. And what we are seeing right now is many countries around the world, including India, and I have to give some more credit to India at this point of time. Much before this uncertainty came by, India embarked on the strategy of Atmanirbhar Bharat. I don't belong to any political party. Please don't mistake me on that. But I truly admire that vision in terms of trying to say we need to become self-sufficient. So that part of it, I think, is now being seen in action. The fact today that we've inaugurated, the Prime Minister inaugurated 3 facilities for chip manufacturing, itself is a great reflection that we will become more self-sufficient. The second thing that I like to say is that we will also have to look more closely into our domestic market as such. Raman said that he did only export business. I continue to do largely export business. 99% of the business that the company I found continues to be in the export markets. Why? The simple answer to it is still there's challenges with ease of doing business. Ease of doing business has to definitely improve. Market access is a problem. The amount of payment, all those things, I'm sure most of you are familiar with. So truly, what will happen by 2047 is our ability to improve our nation's innovation index, ease of doing index, our education index. All these have to work in a positive way. And the geopolitics for sure will continue. You can never predict what's next. So therefore, you have to take that into account and say, we'll still be absolutely a country which will be safe and self-sufficient.
And Srikanth, your views on this particular topic, and perhaps technology can give answers to technology itself, technology problems itself, in the sense that should we be looking at borderless technology footprints and so on? Your views on how we should tackle the global pressure that may come because of our ambitions to become a global superpower?
Firstly, I would call myself a globalist, and any of the deglobalization forces that are currently operating in the world, I think, is a huge risk to the progress of the world. So,
very well said.
I think we are in a global world. We need to get integrated with them, and I'm so encouraged by the 1,500 plus GCCs that Harish Bhai spoke about. Those are doing some amazing innovative work in India. So as India is getting deeply integrated with the rest of the world, and we are like inevitable India, right? That's what it is. So in that world, I think we have a place. Our place is going to only get stronger and stronger, and it will be very difficult. Like they say, wherever there's a McDonald's, United States has never had a war with any country which has had a McDonald's franchise in the country, right? That's really the kind of thing. Given that everyone will have an office in India, and the second largest workforce at every other company in the world is going to be in India, I think it would be hard to fight India or push India out. I think so. Globalization is the way for India, given that we have the population strengths and so on. So I would push there. Second, I think it doesn't mean that we are not strong. Peace comes from strength. So we have to be strong as a nation, and we need to have all of the technologies that we don't have to depend on that. When in the late 90s, when that whole blast happened, after that we didn't get that 128-bit encryption, all that stuff happened, right? I think these kinds of issues we can't face anymore. We can't risk that. So India has to certainly develop its own infrastructure. Right now, for example, do we have the chip capacity for, let's say, AI computes? I think the whole country is struggling to figure out enough computational horsepower for AI. So that certainly we need to build. Do we have the right kind of investment capacity in very long term? We have to build that. We have the right kind of way to harness our people power. We certainly have to build all those things in such a way that we are self-reliant. But I think I see the world as a globalist world in which India's position only gets stronger because of the integration that we have with the rest of the world.
Wonderful. And Raman, so, when you start looking at the startup ecosystem once again, India does have a very robust startup ecosystem, just as the US has. Perhaps you have challenges in China and you have challenges in Europe. So what are some of the lessons that we can learn from there, and what is it that we can do to protect ourselves from? I'm sure these global forces will act against us. So how can we protect
I will
ourselves?
not take the bait of the challenges that the startup ecosystem have. I'll go into another long discussion and bore people with it. See, we have to learn from what has happened in China. Okay, the geopolitical is a reality. There is also a world-class top-end diplomatic capability that is available in this country. We are so used to thinking that industry has to do what industry has to do and the government has to do what government has to do. I think the next few years, the time of that collaboration, we are a market of 1.4 billion people. Srikanth just said, every company in the world will want to be here. We have some leveraging capability. And China also is a large market. But they did not use diplomacy and other capabilities. They used brute force to be able to do it. I mean, we as a country make a lot of noise about China, but they are our largest trading partner today. We do billions of dollars worth of business because there is no alternative. There is a huge TINA factor to what China has to do. But I'm saying it is an integrated approach. The best minds, it is not. I think the time for the government to do, thinking in a bubble and the industry to do thinking in a bubble, those days are over. We have to collaborate and find solutions that are good for the country and therefore good for the industry, therefore good for the startups. We have to find startups a market that is beyond India. And within India, I'm just repeating what Mohan Garu said. There are challenges today. Unless we accept that there are challenges and we find a way to overcome those hurdles, that is what will create the India of tomorrow.
Wonderful. So, essentially what my takeaway from this is that, yes, there are a number of things that need to be done, whether it is in terms of the policy, in terms of the people, in terms of the IP regime, in terms of deep tech missions that are there, in terms of being a global player, and in terms of ensuring that our political voice and our diplomatic voice also matches this entire thing, and the industry and the people. So, I think we are looking at building up a very, very robust kind of an ecosystem. And I think indeed if we do that, then yes, India can definitely and will definitely become a global superpower in 2047. So, yeah, Ajay, you want to add something? Yep, please.
So,
Yeah, the mic is going. Mic is coming.
I think this has been a brilliant discussion because I think to look towards 2047 is absolutely essential. And all the points that have been made are absolutely perfect. But I think, Raman, we all know what happens to startups in this country, and it's an absolute disaster. You know, I believe that if we really want to create ourselves as a tech superpower, the government must open up its doors to give business to Indian companies. Today, if a startup wants to do business with the government, it's a pain. I have a startup in IIN who got an order for 8 crores, right? He was asked to give a BG of 6 crores. And the funding that he had got from IIN was 4 crores. So just imagine what happens to that guy. So, you know, these kind of things have to just go away. We have to have more trust in our startups. We have to have more trust in our own companies to be able to deliver. This nonsense of saying, you know, give a BG. A startup wanted 5 crores as a loan from TDB, for example. He was asked to give an asset against the 5 crores. Now, this guy was a little experienced, so he had a home. He put up his home for that 5 crores. Now, these are not things to do. These are things we should leave behind. You know, where should we go as we look at 2047? I think the answer lies in what you said earlier, IP, R&D, what Mohan Garu said. That's where the answer lies. We need to invest more in R&D. And therefore, we also need to, in addition to services, move back into products. You know, we started out with products, right? We got to go back to products. As a country, we must be a product country if we want to be successful. Because the opportunity size today is so huge. Today, all the trust that China had got because of being a product country has got dissipated as a result of the geopolitical situation. Nobody wants to trust China anymore. So we need to go and occupy that space to be a product nation in everything that we do. And you know, if you look at the services business, there are headwinds to that services. I mean, you talked about how ChatGPT or Gen AI can impact services. You know, these are all things that are facing us. It's going to be there for every service industry of this country. So we need to very strongly, with all the things we have learned from the service industry, the skills that we have created, the skills that sit into the 160 GCCs, we need to pick those skills and create products in this country so we can actually take a direction of being a product superpower. That's where we should go. And when I looked at, you know, I just did a number. One day we were sitting around 6, 7 of us looking at where electronics should be by 2047. And the number we came up with was 4 trillion.
Yeah.
4 trillion is our opportunity size. Inside that is sitting 1 trillion of value addition that we can do if we are a product nation. So, you know, this is really the way we should be looking at the country. And therefore, we must open our minds to using our capability to create products in addition to being a services country. And that way, we will definitely be a tech superpower.
No, absolutely. Our economy is, you are right, very skewed towards services, and therefore, you know, in terms of products, of course, products are also now becoming services, you know, I mean, software as a service. And I think India is taking a good lead in that specific area. But yeah, those are the kind of things that we will need to do.
I want to point out something to you. 1 minute. I want to just point out something to you. Do you know that HCL is today the world's largest software product company out of India? Largest software product company out of India. And we are the 18th largest in the world. So, you know, the services in businesses can create products.
Yeah, I saw lots of people want to say something. But can I just request for, I suddenly saw 4 or 5 hands. Can I just request that can we keep the thing to perhaps 30 seconds?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I heard a little bit about government bashing. I don't agree with that. I think we need, I don't We have worked so closely with the government over the last 30 years and with fantastic experience. Yes, it takes time, but we need to figure out a way to work with them, and we will find cheerleaders and the champions within the government to get the things done the way we want.
स्टार्टअप्स की कोई एसोसिएशन नहीं है. हाँ, अशांक, very quickly. 30 seconds, please. And I saw one hand from there, and somebody is
29 seconds. Okay.
29.
So, great points by all of them, I think. Very, very enlightening. I am making one point on geopolitical questions of yours. I am saying very simple thing. Money gets respect. Money gets power. India should focus on increasing GDP at a faster rate, 7%, 8%, 9%, 10%. It is that which puts you in the right center of the political power, defense power, and economic power. Once that is there, everything falls in place. Why do you think China gets the respect that they want? We all know that, right? I think we need to focus on economic growth of the country to become a very large player. We should increase the speed of growth. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah. Yogesh, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, this is in response to Ajay's observation on startups. And I agree with him that startups do face this problem. I'm just wondering, we have huge funds sitting all around with SIDBIs and every other place, and these funds are also managed by some of our industry leaders together. Can these funds be directed to support the startups the way Ajay said? I wonder if that's possible. Thank you.
There was one more hand. Yeah, Arun, can.
No, I just wanted to add one thing which somebody mentioned in the panel is healthcare. Because that's something that I'm personally deeply involved in. Because while we can, build this electronics and which is a must, but I mean, here's the challenge for us. The US spends 18 to 20% of its GDP for healthcare. Can we get a better outcome with 5%? That's where technology will come in, and that will become a world-beating development for the world.
Yeah, absolutely, and that will ensure that we are there to see 2047.
Not me.
On that note, thank you very much, all of you, the panel. I think it was a very invigorating discussion. Thank you very much.